Hello, I'm Kimberley Dondo, Digital Content Manager, and welcome to In Conversation With, the podcast series that delves into the world of financial services and brings you face to face with some of the most notable figures in the industry. Listen as we discuss topics that are currently facing the industry and hear from visionary CEOs to disruptive innovators as we bring you a diverse array of voices and perspectives. We'll explore the challenges they faced, the lessons they've learned, and the insights they have to share about the ever-evolving landscape of financial services. Hello and welcome to In Conversation With. I'm Kimberley Dondo, and in today's episode, I'm joined by Chris Lewis, Chief Financial and Operating Officer at Pembroke VCT. Thank you for joining me today, Chris.
Hello, Kimberley. My pleasure to be here with you.
So could you give us a bit of background into yourself and how you got started in the industry?
I trained as an accountant, and I'm the CFO and Chief Operating Officer at Pembroke. So we run a VCT that's about £250 million under management. Before Pembroke, I spent 10 years at Downing, and they also had VCT and EIS products. So I've been involved with VCTs for only 15 years.
Okay, great. So VCTs are celebrating their 30th anniversary this year. So looking back, you've worked in VCTs for half that time. How has the sector evolved since its inception and since you started?
Looking back to 15 years ago, they're probably sort of chalk and cheese, but it's a gradual evolution of the space sort of over time. I think originally, certainly sort of looking back even 30 years, they were set up by Lord Clark, so Kenneth Clark, the Chancellor at the time, as a way of bridging the gap for startup, scale-up industry in this country. And the scheme could have failed just as much as it has succeeded, quite frankly, in the last 30 years. So with VCTs and EIS all part of the same legislation, they've gone from just an idea in Lord Clark's budget back in 1995. And I'd say that they certainly professionalised and accelerated their growth in the last 15 years, or in the second half of that lifetime. Originally, they were very much a niche product, often invested in asset-backed type businesses. So very early on, you can invest in things like pubs and care homes, all of which are operating businesses, but obviously have a lot of sort of land and buildings to operate from, and that sort of reduce the investment risk. I think over time, the rules have changed, and they are now very much more on risk in terms of the types of businesses and ventures that we invest in. And I think the latest trend is obviously there's a lot of more backing of technologies, and I mean that in the largest sense, from whether it's AI to clean tech and pharma. So there's a lot more sort of intellectual property as opposed to asset property compared to 15 or 30 years ago. In the meantime, I think VCTs have come from very much maybe a niche part of the alternative investment space. But nowadays, I think most IFAs, independent financial advisors, will be talking to their clients about venture capital trusts. So it's becoming a more mainstream element of the alternative investment choices.
Right. And what role have VCTs played in supporting UK startups and SMEs over the past 3 decades, and how has that role changed over time?
I think it continues to change. It's difficult to put your finger on something in any point in time, but the VCT Association, who I work with to represent the investment managers in the space. So we're the ones that do the day-to-day work, the investing, the researching, the advising the companies. So we've got investments collectively in maybe 1,000 companies nowadays, and that represents over 100,000 jobs in the UK economy. Some people call them jobs. I like to refer to them as household incomes, and it just brings it home a little bit more. There's 100,000 households that have got incomes from businesses backed by venture capital trusts that otherwise may not exist. And for me, that's a really important part of what I do, and I'm proud to say that as an industry we've created that, and that hopefully we can continue to create more jobs in the UK as we go forwards. And I think in the old days it was care homes and pubs, and I think nowadays we've got clean tech, lots of software, cybersecurity, pharma. I sort of lose track, but there's certainly the hot sectors across the wider investment world are certainly reflected within UK venture capital and UK VCTs.
Mm-hmm. And thinking back to the autumn budget, what impact do you see it having on the VCT market in 2025, if at all?
I think the 2025 budget was fascinating. Rachel Reeves kicked it off, and I think in the first 2 minutes, because I watched it live, and it stuck with me. She said her budget was all about Labour wanting to invest. And I thought, well, that's what VCTs have been doing for 30 years. We do what it says on the tin, and we've got a good system. But I think this budget may have kick-started the need or the realisation to make a good scheme great. And I think that's where we're moving to now. Originally, we've also had, in the part of that budget, we've had changes to pensions and ISAs, and the whole tax-efficient landscape, I say, has just become a little bit more difficult for the average UK taxpayer and retail investor. And so the pockets of opportunity for tax-efficient investments are fewer and further between, and they're becoming less generous. And as a result of that erosion, things like EIS and VCT just become more prominent simply because they're still there. And I think the extra announcement in the spring statement following her October budget from last year that the Chancellor now wants to engage with the VCT and EIS sector to have a series of roundtables over the summer, I think is real evidence and hopefully a good news story that the government is really serious about trying to take this scheme that everybody likes, all MPs from both sides of the House, and again in the House of Lords. It's a very popular scheme. It's got lots of support, but it's been a little bit sort of held back by lack of focus on the rules because it's not very interesting exercise. I mean, the rule book is very big and very detailed, and the key is just about trying to get enough government support and Whitehall support. So yes, well, now is the time for us to have a look at these rules. Once in a while, certainly. I think certainly in the last 15 years, that it's been such a big review on the cards. And I think it's a real opportunity for the sector itself, but also the wider UK venture capital sector to stimulate the investments that we can put into our own homegrown companies. I think with the current geopolitical landscape, the amount of maybe US capital that's likely to be coming over the Atlantic into our to fund our UK companies is probably on balance less than it was before. Now that may change, and I'm sure it will change. But in the meantime, I think we have a custodial sort of duty to focus on our homegrown talent and say, what are we going to do about it?
Yeah. And the government's decision to formally extend the sunset clause was a significant moment for the industry. So what does this mean for VCTs and the business they support?
It was a watershed moment, really, Kimberley, because without the extension, the scheme would have been, I think, in breach of European rules for state aid. So it needed the European Commission, or the UK government needed the European Commission to approve its proposals to extend it. Now, it sounds like a no-brainer and a really good idea to extend it, but you never know in the world of post-Brexit and that overlapping agendas of sort of politics and economics as to whether it was actually going to be done. So this is something that the VCT Association has worked very hard on over the last 5 or 6 years. And fortunately, the previous government worked very hard at securing the extension, and the current government, when it got into power, signed on the dotted line to make sure that we all had another 10 years for VCT and for EIS so we can continue the work that we're doing. And it affects it's got a twofold effect. One is that we can now continue to invest and back the companies that we already have in our portfolio, and then also look for the new ones that will provide future growth in future. If we hadn't had the extension, then both would have been put at risk, quite frankly. So we're lucky we've got a 10-year horizon to work with now. But at the same time, that series of sort of spring roundtables with the government and Treasury around VCTs and EIS is a real opportunity to say, right, well, how can we make this scheme, how can we turbocharge it for the next 10 years? And that's what we're about to sort of engage with in a series of roundtables over the summer to try and put some ideas to the government, to Treasury and HMRC about how we can maybe update some of the more complicated VCT rules that would allow us to reach more companies and to have better outcomes for investors.
Right. So that could potentially be something that may be mentioned in the autumn budget this year.
Ooh, well, I've got both fingers crossed for that. So that's what we're working on doing. As ever, it's a slow process, but it feels like there's genuine goodwill and desire, both from Rachel Reeves' office and from our contacts in the Treasury and across the MP base that we sort of discuss and will connect with regularly to do something about it. Everybody likes a VCT and an EIS success story, but there's a little bit of maintenance that needs to be done in terms of updating the rules so that it's really fit for purpose for the next 10 years until the end of the next sunset clause extension. And without it, there's a risk that the scheme becomes no longer fit for purpose. I mean, just one example. The last time the annual investment limits for a typical company is £5 million in 1 year. Now, in 2016, that £5 million, when the rule was set, allowed quite a substantial amount of investment to be made on the back of that capital injected. Fast forward to 2025, we're running at about at least 40% inflation between those two dates. So very soon, maybe next year or the year after, if we don't do anything about it, the whole industry's investment power, the power of change, is going to be half what it used to be. All this because the rules haven't been updated. So there's two parts to the updating and the revision of the framework. One is to catch up the past, and two is then to future-proof it for the future as we go towards the next sunset clause. So there's a real case that we're going to try and engage with the government on about being brave, and how brave can we be? How much of an impact can we make this scheme deliver? And again, I think I might have said it earlier. We've got a really good scheme with VCTs, but we need to make it great. Right.
And you've outlined some of the pressing changes that need to be made. But are there any others?
Ooh, there's lots and lots of rules. And the key is about focusing on the ones that are going to make the most impact.
Right.
So the age limits is one. And that's annual limits, lifetime limits, what they call the gross asset test, and so how big the company's balance sheet could be. So that's very much financial. The other one that make a massive difference is what we call the age limit. Currently, there's a 7-year age limit on a company to qualify for venture capital trust investment and for EIS money. It's 10 for if you're knowledge intensive, so you do lots of our research and development. But it's either 7 or 10. Now, this rule of 7 or 10 years was brought in really at the behest of the EU back in the day. And it's been a bit sort of rate limiting for a number of reasons. One effectively is that if a company comes to you and is 7 years and a day old, it's like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't help you. That's not a very good message for the venture capital trust industry to give. What we've also found through research done by the VCT Association is that companies in the region, so outside the Southeast, generally take longer to build up a head of steam, to be of a size and of a maturity that will start to attract VCT investment. And so what that means is there's a regional imbalance, and it might, in the same company does the same thing, might take an extra couple of years in the region as opposed to in London or in the Southeast. And so all of a sudden you've disadvantaged that access to capital simply because of where the company is based. That's not really a very helpful criteria. Equally, if it makes it more difficult for female founders to start and maybe put down or pause a business whilst they swap their focus to their family obligations before coming back later on. And so you can see that maybe a female founder has got a bit more time on her hands later on in life for children growing up, refocuses on a pre-existing business. Oh, sorry, madam, your business is much older than 7 years. We can't help you. That's not a great look, is it? And there's no monopoly that good startup, scale-up ideas come around in the first 7 years. The other quirk that we have in the system, and it's a bit of subtlety, is that the current rules of 7 or 10 are based on the age of the company. So if you, Kimberley, 6 years ago, or 7 years, 6 years ago, set up a company that did some consulting, and now you've changed and you want to change the company to focus on production podcasts, you've only got one more year of VCT qualifying window to go and do that.
Even though I pivoted?
Even though you pivoted, yeah. So for all these reasons, we're going to propose to the government, say that, well, how brave do you want to be? Can you get rid of age limits altogether? Just make it something like 15 years and do it on the age of the business that you're backing, not on the age of the company, because companies go through different cycles, different products. So by getting rid of or really increasing that age limit, you get a lot more sort of space. Also, by increasing the investment limits, you get to make a bigger difference in the companies that are most likely to succeed. If you combine the two, that's how we think we can go from good to great.
Right. And to pivot and look at investors, so investor sentiment is crucial for the success of VCTs. So how do you see investor appetite shifting, particularly in light of economic uncertainty? And it just keeps getting more and more uncertain.
Uncertainty, isn't it? Wow. Where do we start? This is I'm actually going to start the answer by focusing on the founders. The founders of the businesses that we back. It's their day job to overcome adversity and challenge, adapt, find a different way, survive. And it's because of their inherent resilience that the ventures sector exists. And it's without people like that don't take no for an answer and are inventive in the ways that they can overcome the problems that they face, that we have a venture capital industry that's willing to back them with money and price to take their idea to make it bigger. And it's that process of taking ideas and making them bigger that is at the heart of that backs the sentiment of the investors into the VCTs. It's not just a tax rate. Yes, it's got 30% tax credit on there, but that's a well-known sort of quid pro quo for investing into a sector that's much riskier, than investing in the S&P 500, FTSE 100. Although we've seen those move quite a bit in the last few weeks as well, haven't we? But that's outside of the venture space. So there's the businesses that we are seeing starting to mature nowadays. And beginning to become ready for either additional investment from larger venture capital companies or houses or private equity, or being sold to trade, is that the founders have lived through a series of so almost annual challenges. We had Brexit, which still hasn't really happened yet, but we had Brexit. We had COVID-1. COVID-2.
Yes.
Then we had what else we had? Well, unfortunately we've had a number of sort of war zones in the world that are sad and tragic, and have also had a disruptive effect on supply chain of businesses around the world. We also had a bit of a heart-stopper moment when Silicon Valley Bank stopped trading.
I almost forgot about that.
Haven't we just? But the founders keep overcoming all of this, and there's a lot of sort of positive mental attitude, and I'm seeing in our business at Pembroke. We had one exit recently, a company called Secret Food Tours, or a partial exit, which has attracted more investment from another VC house, and we've stayed in because we think the company has got sort of further to go. So we've kept half our original stake. So there's a lot more activity on the exits front. Which is great. And also, I'd say that the pipeline of companies that we are now seeing have been better than they have in the last 5 years. I'd say that in the last 3 or 4 years, ventures valuations, and that's for the price at which we put money into a company, or that we value it at in the fund, has been, I'd say, under pressure, and because of all these waves of challenges in the global sort of macro landscape. But in the meantime, these businesses have been sort of working away, hard. They all need sort of cash to survive. And the ones that could secure cash from their existing shareholder base with such small follow-on investments during these last few years to keep them ticking over, haven't necessarily needed to come to market for a big new fundraise. Because so that extra cash from their existing supporters has allowed them to wait until the conditions get better and valuations for their business improve. And what that means is when the new investor comes along, because their valuation is that much higher, they'll be giving away less of their business to the new acquirer by less dilution. So because the price is higher, they give away less, but they get the same amount of cash to help it grow. And so by staying out of the market in those difficult times, they're basically keeping their powder dry. And we're seeing a number of these businesses come to us at the moment, looking for that big round, having been helped out a little bit over the last 3 or 4 years. And as valuations start to move back upwards. So I think we are starting to see the sort of green shoots of improved valuations, but it seems that every day that we read the FT, there's something else that we have to sort of overcome.
Yeah, but it makes for resilient companies, I think.
Everybody in ventures is resilient. I mean, unfortunately, the way ventures work is things tend to go wrong before they go right.
Exactly.
And in the VCT space, because of the types of businesses that we're investing in now, I'd say it takes longer for things to go right. When things do go right, the multiples are much bigger than they ever were in the past. I mean, in the early days, if you bought a pub for £1 million and you sold it 10 years later for £2 million, maybe that was a good exit. Nowadays, if you're putting £1 million in and the business does really well, you might be getting £30 million back. Brilliant. That's all for the investor's benefit. So the landscape is changing. And yes, there's risk, but the returns are there. And the advantages of VCTs is that they, certainly for retail investors, is that they offer the genuine sort of portfolio diversification approach, because most VCTs out there have got at least 30, 40, 50 investments in their portfolio that you can buy into on day one. Some of them have got up to 100 or more. So if you spread an annual investment into the VCT space across 2 VCTs, you might have 100 companies in that. Well, that sort of spreads the risk quite well for getting a toehold into the venture space. It's a lot. It's very difficult to pick the winners and the unicorns. Although I'd say that certainly at Pembroke we don't look to back a unicorn, because before you're a unicorn, you're half a unicorn, and you basically got to work the way backwards. So the first target may be, can your business be worth 10 million, and it can be worth 50. If you get to 50, or maybe one day be worth 250, and it's that way of looking at things. So I think there's a really nice and pleasing success stories from a number of my colleagues in the investment space that benefit many of the investors in the VCT space. I think it's a great space. I really enjoy it, and I'm lucky to be in it.
Yeah. And finally, for advisors and investors considering VCTs, what key factors should they keep in mind given the current policy and economic landscape?
I think with economic landscape, you have to recognise that we're all operations in the sort of economic cycles, and ventures. I don't think drives any economic cycle, but certainly benefits on the way up and suffers on the way down, like anything else. So the thing with ventures is it was all about sort of opportunity and the potential of the future, and it's about backing those resilient and imaginative entrepreneurs. We talked earlier about that sort of portfolio effect of having one investment spread over 2 VCTs can give you a sort of 100 companies. I think that's important for advisors to share with investors in terms of understanding how to spread the risk within VCTs if that's what they're looking to do, and about outlining the options available to them. And there's broadly sort of 3 VCTs. There's your generalist one that does a bit of everything, and I think Pembroke falls into that. We do a bit of consumer, and there's sort of technology and some business services. And there's a number of generous VCTs. There are some VCTs out there that are more specialized in healthcare or technology. And those are more sector specific. And then there's a third type of VCT, which is the AIM market focused ones, which are slightly different, but equally they have their place as well. And although the AIM market has proven so challenging in the recent years, I know that the AIM industry is also trying to work with the government to try and revitalise that market at the same time.
Well, thank you so much for speaking with me today, Chris. You're a wealth of information, and I really enjoyed this conversation.
Kimberley, thank you for your time. Thanks for having me, and hopefully I'll be back soon one day.
Yes, definitely. Thank you for listening to In Conversation With. We do hope that you enjoyed it. Please do keep up to date with all our new releases via Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere else you get your podcasts from. You can also keep up to date with all our new content published on the Money Marketing website, as well as our print edition Money Marketing magazine. So make sure to subscribe. Follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. See you next time.